Hi, I'm Erin Larkin and I'm here with John Jens, and we're doing something kind of exciting that we've had in the planning for a little while, and we are looking at 7 vintages of the Reserve Bin A Chardonnay from Penfolds and the Yattarna Chardonnay. The reason why we're doing this was sort of, actually I can't remember why we started talking about it, but I think because I emailed...
Because they're so bloody good.
They're so good. But yeah, basically I contacted Kim Schroeder, the white wine maker, a friend of mine, and just said, I love what you're doing. Can we talk about some older vintages? If we were to do a vertical, what vintages would you suggest? So they kindly released some for us from the museum at McGill, and then we managed to get the others from retailers in Perth, and the 19 was sent to us as a sample for the 20 collection release, which was just announced this week. So where do you want to start, John?
Okay, so over the years, no, we'd better start off by saying that Chardonnay is a new thing for Australia. Semillon and Riesling have been here for almost ever, but Chardonnay's new. As late as the 1970s, there was almost no Chardonnay in Australia. There was almost no Chardonnay in Australia. Penfolds did have a touch. Petaluma put out the first Great Australian Chardonnay in about 1978, and the first commercial quantities came out, quantities that you could buy in each store in the country if you wished, didn't come out until the 1980s. That's extraordinary for what is now our greatest grape variety. The last time I looked, there were over, in fact, the last time I looked, there were about 35,000 hectares of Chardonnay in Australia, easily the largest planted grape variety of any sort. And over the years, we've totally and absolutely changed and refined our styles. Now, I reckon there are 4 great Chardonnay producers in Australia. I may offend, I may hurt some people here, but this is the way I see it. Over time, and I haven't talked to Erin about this because we don't plan any of this, we just start talking. I reckon Lewin Estate and Gioconda would be on most people's cards as a couple of the best in the country. For many years, Piero in Margaret River was regarded as one of the best. Probably Cullens have stepped in there now, and especially when you get to their Legacy series, which I think are just truly great wines, and they are brilliantly reviewed overseas. And perhaps here in Australia as well, but they come out in tiny quantities, 25, 50 or 75 dozen, whereas some of the others will produce thousands of dozens. And then there's Penfolds. Penfolds have been making great wines since the mid-2000s, and Oliver Crawford, their previous white wine maker, did a marvellous job on the show circuit. At most Australian white wine shows, he picked up gold medals and trophies, and I don't mean 1 or 2. He was dominating the Australian Chardonnay side of the national capital city wine show circuit. Penfolds since then have improved. I'll throw it back to you, and if you want to go from there.
Just to put our views into context, obviously we're in Western Australia, which is where Margaret River is, and Margaret River produces some of the greatest Chardonnay in Australia, and we're fortunate enough to look at those wines each week. Coming from 2 deeply parochial drinkers from Western Australia with regards to Chardonnay, these wines are absolutely exceptional, no ifs or buts. We love them. That doesn't mean that we love them more than WA or less than WA, but we're coming here to tell you that as avid Chardonnay drinkers, these are amongst Australia's very best. So we're going to break the tasting up into 2 parts, the Reserve Bins and then the Yattarnas. Just a quick talk about service, because I've had a lot of people contact me over the last couple of weeks and say, do we decant? How long do we decant for? What do we decant? What do we decant in? These wines, we would always recommend decanting Chardonnay, and the difference between decanted Chardonnay and undecanted Chardonnay is huge, and if you'd like to test us on that, please do. I would recommend opening a bottle, pouring a glass, pouring the other glass into something and like vigorously swirling it around and then looking at them both. You will find that the decanting affects not only the perception of fruit flavour and complexity, but also the texture on the palate. It just really kind of silks it out and integrates it and really allows you to see the wine as it should be. So we have vintage 2019 Reserve Bin A, 2018 Reserve Bin A, 2017 Reserve Bin A, and 2010 Reserve Bin A, this one from the cellar, from the museum. So starting with 2019, this was just released. This is part of the 2020 collection release, which has just gone live on the 23rd of July, and I think in stores from the 6th of August. For me, so this leads with toasted cashew, but it has a green banana character, and I associate that with very young Chardonnay. I love the complexity and the saltiness of this wine. It's perfectly and totally within style, and I really enjoyed it. It's the length of flavour thing that really gets me on these. These are like a worked complex style. These are svelte, silky and polished, so really interestingly different. The fruit for these wines is Adelaide Hills. And in terms of clones, if you get off on clones, I do. This is a fair whack of these is the Bernard Clone 96. And the 2010, obviously being a big jump in years here, is predominantly made up of the V110 I10 clone.
Clones aren't my thing. I don't know. I just drink it. Okay, so for me, and I really agree with and confirm and go along with, but even go further with Erin on the idea of the breathing. I reckon it hides the acidity, hides the crispness, hides some of the phenolics, so the fruit comes up, and I think your word was integrated, which it makes it a much more integrated wine. I totally agree with that. And we run restaurants. Anything that's serious, anything that's in Chardonnay, anything that's in oak, so Chardonnays, Pinots, Shiraz, Cabernets, we'll decant not once or twice, and we want to go further than the vigorous swirl. Erin's indicating decant, backwards and forwards. Get a couple of decanters and go backwards and forwards, 7 or 8 times, then put them on the table. People can't believe it's the same wine. Makes a huge difference, and we've done it again today.
I didn't tell him, but at a Lewin event that I hosted at Le Mans last week, I didn't tell you this, sorry, but we were talking about decanting, and we had the 15, 16, 17 Art Series Chardonnay in front of us, and we were talking about decanting, and obviously we decanted those wines. But I was sort of seeing a few blank looks, so I actually opened up another bottle and gave them each a 4th glass, just a mouthful, but literally straight out of the fridge. So we had we decanted the others back and forward, taken them out of the fridge an hour prior to serving. They were at this beautiful place, and I think people take that for granted when they just served it. So I pulled one out of the fridge at 3 degrees, cracked it, let everyone have a mouthful, and there was astounded faces in the restaurant, because it really does illustrate how different it is and how little you get from a Chardonnay that is just straight from the fridge, not decanted.
Okay, now, so with this guy, and I believe that totally, with this guy, it's more youthful in my mind than any of the more recent releases have been. The others have been bolder, fuller, longer, more structured, upfront flavours. This is leaner, extremely youthful, enormous length. Erin and I were talking just before we started the video, after we'd run through these. I reckon that with winemaking techniques today, with the viticultural techniques today, with viticultural vineyards, the vineyards that are being selected now, and the guys knowing how to handle the fruit better, I reckon that the more recent wines are getting greater length of flavour, which you can only get from having the right clone in the right soil, in the right season, and pruning in the right way. And I reckon, so the length on these is enormous, but it's a very tough job for the 19 to match up to the extraordinary quality of the 2 previous wines, one of which we've discussed quite recently, but still a lovely wine, very young, needs a touch of time. And wines change very quickly. If Erin and I are in a position where we look at a lot of wines, so if we look at a Chardonnay like this, once a month for 12 months, you'll see a whole progression of flavour changes and structural changes and deliciousness changes, and that's only just starting that journey right now.
It is. It's absolutely infantile. Actually, I came up when I went back to this wine, so I tasted them all, and then I'd look at them all again just to make sure, because it's all about ranking, right? Like I have a rank between them. And so I write my notes as I see them, and then I go back and just try them all again and just go with my heart and just say, which actually do I love the most, and is that reflected in the points that I've given? And the thing that I missed writing the first time about this 19, and I wrote with haste at the end, is that there's a real energy and a real verve. It's kind of like an electricity on the palate, and I really like it. I think this was not my highest pointed of the 4, but in terms of what I'd be drinking quite a lot of now, this would be really close to the top. It's like very delicious.
And with some little bit of racy acidity still tucked away,
yes,
running from the middle palate to the finish.
Yes.
But still a lovely wine, very highly pointed, and stands very high in the Chardonnay pantheon.
Now, 2018 Reserve Bin A. I was slightly up on this wine. I don't know what your points reflected.
We tasted separately, didn't discuss our points.
I
reckon it's awesome. I love it. This is the second time we've looked at this in lineups.
This is incredibly bold and almost round at the front, and just leads on that in that fashion. I think it's a combination of obviously vintage expression, but also a year more in bottle, because everything is so much more integrated. And it's really easy to say that, you know, this is this and this is this, but we're also looking at not just different, slightly maybe different blocks or vineyards or whatever, but we're also looking at a year later in time, which is a big impact.
Okay, so Erin and I looked at this, as I said, a little while ago. We gave it extraordinary points. Not the highest we've ever had in the country, but bloody close to it, very, very close to it. Extraordinary. Found it hard to believe against some of the great wines in the country. So it wasn't just standing in a range of $15 Chardonnays. It was against the greatest Chardonnays in the country, and it was just outstanding. I loved it. The structure, texture, length, finish, aftertaste, the flavours. This was a standout. It's a great wine. Then we spoke to the Penfolds boys, both Kim Schroeder, who has been an international winemaker of the year, white winemaker of the year at the International Wine Challenge, in my opinion, the greatest wine show on earth. And also I did check, I love doing my homework, since 2005, so in the 12 vintages since 2005, the 12 years since 2005, Kim with the Binays has won 10 gold medals at the International Wine Challenge, which is extraordinary. That would be the envy of almost any wine company on earth. I just don't see how you can be so consistent against the greatest, many of the greatest, not all the greatest Chardonnays, many of the greatest Chardonnays on earth. But he's also picked up 10 trophies. Not all of them are for the best wine of the show. In fact, almost none of them are, but at least one of them was, the 2009 from memory. But he also picked up Best Australian Chardonnay, Best South Australian Chardonnay, whatever it happens to be. And still an extraordinary effort and of great consistency. There were only 5 years in the 12 that he didn't pick up a gold medal for Binay Chardonnays, and he picked up about 7 golds for Yattarna as well. Even that would be the envy of the world. But on top of that, with things like Bin 311, the Highland and the Cellar Reserve, they picked up another 8 golds and another 3 trophies. Kim Schroeder is a great Chardonnay maker, and he's gone even further than the truly great Oliver Crawford. Oliver Crawford, their winemaker during the late 2000s, was a great winemaker, dominated the Australian wine show system, dominated most shows. They got gold medals and trophies with several wines, not one. Quite extraordinary. Kim is now doing a better job under the guidance and the umbrella that Peter Gago has built for his team. Quite extraordinary effort. These are some of the greats. So Erin and I loved this wine, but Kim, unfortunately, or perhaps fortunately, said, no, wait till you try this one. Compare the two side by side. And we actually had that delivered from Penfolds to us, yeah.
That's very kind.
And we now can see what he's talking about. This did brilliantly, both in the International Wine Show, where it got three trophies, but it also got 3 trophies at the Royal Sydney Wine Show, and was also the wine of the year on the Australian Wine Show circuit. I can't remember the name of the trophy, it got the trophy for of all the champion wines of the 7 capital city wine shows. They tasted them all off at Sydney each year. That got the wine for the best wine of the show. Peter Gago, the great Peter Gago, and Kim thinks that's one of the greatest. Well, they believe that. I think that is the greatest of the Binays to date. So we're talking about 2 great wines here.
We are.
Staggering. I gave this about 19.2 or 19.3, which for me is just incredibly high. Looking at this now, putting the 2 side by side, I've dropped that back to 19.2 and lifted this to 19.3. That's 0.1 off the couple of greatest Australian Chardonnays I've ever seen, and in fact it could even match the greatest 2 or 3 Australian Chardonnays I've ever seen, because I feel that the 17 is even more complete, more textural, even a touch greater length, more seamless, but still with that fine texturing, complete, luscious, delicious, and even better after we did the decanting backwards and forwards.
So I think that's the longest I've ever gone without talking in a video, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, thanks. You know, when we looked, do you remember when we looked at this? And
yeah.
Kim was like, you guys, great, it's really good, but like the 17's better. And I said to him, I was like, well, look, I don't mean to be rude, but the 17's going to be pretty good if it's going to be better than the 18. And I can see absolutely everything that is discussed around the 17, and I was slightly higher on my points. It's more kind of restrained, more spicy. It's more restrained, but more full at the same time, if that makes sense. And I know that they're 2 contrasting things.
Oh, no, they're not. No, they're not mutually exclusive. Yep.
Maybe not. Well, I think that really encapsulates both of those. It's really like choosing between children. They're all delicious. Now, Reserve Bin 10A. So
look at the smile on her face.
I'm smiling because everyone, I mean, if you're a wine buyer, you know, you have a cellar or a fridge or a little bit under the stairs or whatever it is, and you buy wine and you love it, you will remember and you'll be able to work it out right as we watch this video what your first great bottle of wine that you bought was. You sit down and you're like, yeah, that really defined my kind of movements in wine. I paid for a full 6-pack of the 10A, and we drank my last bottle of it at Wine Club last November, or maybe even the November before, and it's just such a glorious wine. And I think that, well, that's why we have this, because not only is it a really great example of an older reserve bin, but it's also kind of a sentimental wine for me. I'm deeply impressed by it today, like I was 2 years ago, like I have been over the last 5 years. And the thing that I have written in my article, which the link is down below, the thing that I have written the very first sentence was the most remarkable thing about all of these wines, with the exception of this, which is by far the palest, this and this, they're pretty much the same colour. I mean, that's astounding to me.
This is 13 years old.
Yes,
and
12.
12 years old, yeah.
12 years old, and pretty much the same colour as a wine that's 2 years old. Let's have a look at that. I don't know if you can see that, but they're comparable. It's amazing. So, anyway, the 10, I've looked at the 10 beside the Bonneau de Martre Corton Charlemagne. We did that at my birthday a couple of years ago. I've looked at it in the Wine Club.
What year?
10.
Do you remember? No, we did 10 and 10.
10B10.
Oh.
That was the whole point. And we did 10 Lewin too. It's on my 30th. It was fun. And there was like a bunch of times that I've looked at this wine in context with other wines from other regions, and it's just glorious, and I love it. So if you have any 10 in your cellar, lucky you, call me when you open it. What did you think?
Okay. We all love wines for different reasons and love characters in wines for different reasons. So Erin told me off camera that she gave this very, very high points.
It wasn't just that one.
You can't... Context is important. So where we're at with these wines, and I've already said that with changes today in a number of areas, we're getting wines of greater length of flavour. On an international scale, our Chardonnays are getting better and better and better, as is indicated by the wine show system, international wine show system, and international reviews, because many international reviewers are saying that these are some of the great wines. And I heard Jeff Birch from Howard Park, a larger-than-life man in the world of wine in Western Australia, and perhaps nationally, and perhaps to an extent internationally. Jeff Birch talking about not only Penfolds White, but Penfolds Reds, and just saying he's got a large wine group in Western Australia, and he sells it into China. He said he gets up every morning and thanks God that Peter Gago is on the planet, because he's creating an extraordinary image about Australian wine in China, which helps him to go in and sell his wines on the back of. Now with these, Gago has created an image, and Kim has created an image about these wines around the world, but things are changing. Peter Gago never talks about changing styles, and he won't talk about changing styles, and I know because I've asked him. He just says we're not changing styles at all. He says that we're refining the techniques, we're refining the vineyard material, we're refining the equipment, we're refining our mental technology. But where we're at is, these wines have got longer, in my opinion, flavours. This wine is almost complete, but will remain there for another 10 years. It is absolutely complete and absolutely delicious, absolutely seamless, brilliant, drifting away. You know, an aftertaste can be, you've got the length, the finish, and then you've got the an aftertaste can be firm, dry and crisp, or it can be mellow and round. Sorry, the finish can be firm, you've got the body, length, then you've got the aftertaste, or sorry, not the aftertaste, the finish, which can be tight and firm and crisp, or mellow and round, and then you've got a flavour, you've still got a flavour in your mouth now, that's aftertaste, lingering away. Some aftertastes are terrible. Some just drift away beautifully. This drifts away beautifully. So Erin was seduced by this wine. She absolutely loved it, and I know exactly why. If you're going to have a dinner party tonight, or in 5 years or in 10 years, you can have that, but these will all go in the same way with time. This 10 years of age, just delicious. A mouthful of pleasure.
Correct. And I would call that finish languid because I can still taste it. So that's been nearly 2 minutes now. I could still sit down and write new things. What this tasting does more than anything for me, and I don't know about you, but I know that I already like these wines. I'm already a fan. But what it does is it gives me an idea around how they're aging and how they're going to age. And you can see that in these newer vintages, there's a restraint and it's like being corseted together. Do you know, it's like quite tight. But I can see the evolution that these are going to start to the evolutionary path that these are about to walk because of this wine. And I'm pretty much in love with that. I love it. They're really incredible and very, very elegant. Moving into Yattarna. So each year at the Penfolds release, the white wines, the Yattarna and the Reserve, been often the highlights for me, not taking a scrap away from Grange and the Reds because they're incredible, but the Chardonnays are really what get me going, and these are the things that if I'm going to reach for a wine to drink, this is what I would love to drink, this is what would excite me. And so you have a favourite each year because they're different styles. So the Reserve bin is like salty, flinty, matchsticky, worked, delicious, kind of mouthful. It's kind of like your loud friend that's got a really wicked sense of humour and they're fun and they're kind of annoying sometimes, but you'd much, much rather them than your polite friend. These are like total party, total delicious, and I just want them around all the time. This wine is restrained, sophisticated, long, lingering every time. I mean, there's vintage variation. They taste slightly different because of the warmer, cooler seasons, whatever, but they have the same shape and the same style and the same sleekness. And this is a European performance vehicle. This is not an American muscle car. This is like a European performance vehicle. And they have smooth edges and they're kind of like shiny and they're awesome. Doesn't matter what you like, they're awesome.
Okay, so I listened to Erin talk and it gives me ideas. So she said that if she's finishing up on a big tasting or whatever else, what she wants to do is reach for a Chardonnay. I agree totally because I think that our greatest Chardonnays are better than our greatest Rieslings, which I love, and better than our greatest Sauvignon Blancs or Semillons, which I also love. But the greatest of these are fantastic. And these are just... 3 of these could be amongst the 20 greatest and probably amongst the 10 greatest Chardonnays ever made in Australia, and a couple of them could even be in the top 4 or top 5 or top 3. They're very, very good wines, very good wines. And then when Erin's talking about the performance European car versus the muscle car, so over the years, Erin has, not always, but in many years in the past, has preferred, and we haven't talked about this, as a warm-up, has preferred this, whereas I've preferred these. In recent years, I've actually started to prefer the Bernets, which is where Erin was going, than the Yattarnas. Every once in a while, the Penfolds boys think that a Yattarna, I think, really stands out, and I think one of those is here.
Yes. Well, actually 2.
Okay. Correct, yeah, good
so
point.
with, I'm going to jump to the end for a moment, but with the Penfolds release this year, because of COVID, instead of all meeting in Melbourne and listening to Peter and the winemaking team speak about the wines and then getting to talk with other media there and talk, I love this wine, what do you think? Which is a really useful part of the day. We weren't able to do that. What we were able to do is look at these wines over a number of days or in context if we chose. But we were also afforded the opportunity to speak to Peter Gago via Zoom. I went on Zoom, you were on the phone. Actually, I would like to continue that again in later years because being able to talk to him about the wines really cemented an understanding of them for me. And we were talking about this Chardonnay retrospective tasting. I thanked him for sending the older bottles to us. And he said that, he's like, oh, do you have the, I love the life that he leads because he does tastings all around the greatest, most premium venues in the world. I don't mean premium restaurant, I mean like premium private clubs for nobility and, the greatest... Rock bands, like everyone, right? The big guys around the world. And so he has this really fantastic reality. And he was like, the 11 Yattarna and the 8 Yattarna, do you have them in Magnum? I was like, no, Peter, I don't have Magnums of 8 and 11 Yattarna. He said, oh, right, okay, yeah, sure. Look, he says that he uses the 8 and the 11 Yattarna from Magnum to illustrate the ability of Yattarna and the Penfolds whites, but Yattarna to age. And he says that he was pouring the 11 Yattarna from Magnum at a very premium tasting, I think, at Pall Mall recently. And, wine people were sort of talking and not paying attention to what was being poured and were just asking which Grand Cru plot that was. It's not. It's an Australian Chardonnay, thank God. So we're going to talk about these 3 vintages of Yattarna, the 2017, the 16 and the 8. And can I say something? I think it's going to be a little bit unpopular, actually, because I know the reviews that the 17 has received and the general feeling about it and what the winemaking team think. I know all those things. And I'm slightly ahead. I have to triple check my notes. I could be wrong, but I think I'm slightly ahead of this on this than this. But when
Can you clarify that?
Oh, like half a point?
Of this one over that one?
Oh, no, of the 17 over the 16.
Thank you. Thank you. Just asking.
My point is I acknowledge that it's a slightly better wine. But in terms of my pleasure and my enjoyment and my appreciation of it, I think I'm slightly ahead on the 16 because the 16 is kind of explosive. It has this like wall of flavour when you first try it. And I expected it, I keep saying you, I expected it to dissipate, you know, like all show and nothing to finish. But actually, it kind of just sets the tone for the wine, and it's a really big, intense, concentrated wine, and there's a lot of pleasure there. Like, you talk about dinner party wines. I don't know, but I'm putting this one on the table, and I'm putting this one in the wine fridge.
I believe that totally. So, you know, every time, not every time, often when I hear Erin talk, I love that idea, I love that analogy, love the way, love the thoughts. And also it's really important that a wine that can give the greatest pleasure now is not necessarily the greatest wine. It can give you great pleasure now, dinner party wine, a crowd pleaser. These are crowd pleasers right now. This is not a crowd pleaser, but I too think it's a better wine. If I, or apparently Erin from what she was saying, wanted to have one of these for dinner tonight, that is the one you're going to give to your guests and just hear them say, wow, this is fantastic. And they could say, based on the sort of things that Erin says, that is a Grand Cru Burgundy, isn't it? That is a really good wine. Enormous, placid, satiating, as is this, expansive, enormous length, brilliant finish, seamless finish aftertaste, just lingers and lingers. And, oh my God, just away to the far finish. Finishes right over there somewhere. This guy here is has the same great length or even more, is more structured, a little bit tighter, enormous length, brilliant finish, brilliant aftertaste, but much more youthful. The Penfolds team think this is one of the greatest Chardonnays they've ever made, aka the greatest Chardonnay they've ever made, and we could possibly agree.
We don't know that because we haven't seen the 18. That's
correct.
And I've heard
always
the 18.
Right. She's always right. And she is. I agree totally. Good point.
I've heard the 18 is very good. That's why I say that. Very, very
I'm
good.
very grateful, and it's a timely correction. Sensational is going to be sensational. Based on where these are now, and they're just delicious, and I believe that the fruit and the technology within these guys is going to be better. In time, I'm assuming that these wines will be better than these two just lovely wines now. And I emphasise these are, a number of these, and I don't mean 2 or 3, a number of these are amongst the greatest 12 or 15 Chardonnays made in Australia today. These are great wines. We're not just picking stuff out of the middle of nowhere. These are amongst the greatest wines you can buy. There's a couple of other people too, Cullen, Lewin, Giaconda, and there's others, but these are amongst the greatest Chardonnays in the country. These are worthwhile buying.
Yeah, they are. Understatement. This was potentially one of my highest pointed wines of the tasting.
Can you define potentially for me?
It was the highest pointed. It was the highest pointed. It was. It's not taking away from the other wines. It's more a reflection of where it is now. And I think on release, perhaps I would have been slightly behind this on release. I think this is going to be as good, if not better than this in time. This is unbelievable, but just don't touch it. But this is just in this most magnificently perfect place right now, and I don't know, I love it. It takes me to other places outside of Australia, and I think if you served this to me blind and said to me, "Where's this from? New World or Old World?" For a start, I'd smell it and think, "Oh God," I don't know, because it's not. I can't necessarily pick the clone. I can't necessarily pick the region. It sort of smells New World, but it could easily be old. Do you know?
Yeah.
So, Yeah, there's a curry leaf character, which I haven't talked about curry leaves this entire episode, which has been actually pertinent in some of these wines, but there's a curry leaf character on the nose which talks to me about very, very high quality Chardonnay, and it's there.
So, Erin has talked a couple of times about Grand Cru. In mask lineups, a number of these would be picked as Grand Cru, and I don't have any doubt on that. In a lineup of Grand Crus, because it's getting tougher to differentiate between the Australian and the French styles now. As the years have gone by, we're getting closer and closer. We no longer have an idiosyncratically Australian style. We've got an internationalised style. I believe it would be hard to pick a number of these from Grand Cru French Burgundies at $300 to $400 to $500 a bottle. And in fact, maybe even a touch more than that. Yeah. There are some very, very good white Burgundies. A number of these belong up there. They're great. These are great wines.
Look, I guess what we're trying to say is these are exceptional wines. You could be happy purchasing any of the vintages. They are all different, but it really just depends on your personal style. For me, I would just define them as cooler year, warmer year, and you choose whatever you rather, whether you like the buxom, approachable, more ripe and concentrated flavours of the warmer years, or you like things to be a little harder to discern and you like kind of restraint and a bit of mystery, you like cooler years. It really just depends on your personal style and what brings you pleasure. I would recommend them all for different reasons, and what we have here is a really thrilling lineup, and I'm not really sure what I want to cheers you with at the end. I think maybe this one. I might never see this again, so.
And did you talk about how long that would still go for?
I didn't. But I think a very long time. I mean, I mentioned the colour briefly earlier. The colour difference is imperceptible, and if we're looking at a 12-year-old wine, it's crazy. I mean, on-release Chardonnays present these characters now.
So it's certainly only maximum of halfway through its life.
Maximum.
Yeah.
Maximum.
Yeah. So it will get better. It'll give more pleasure in the years to come.
It's actually, though, talking about through its lifetime, yeah, it's probably got another 15 years or more. I mean, it will drink for another 30 years, but just in the perfect peak drinking window, it's probably another decade. But for me, it's actually in its perfect drinking now, because this is still got, I mean, I can write abundant fruit characters here. I mean, this is like pink grapefruit and stone fruit. It's got kind of red berries in there, which I assume are a product of part of the oak. It's creamy, there's all sorts of different nuts, there's spices, all these great things. And they're all, the majority of those are primary fruit characters, which are early drinking characters. But then you get all of the older kind of tertiary characters, more complexity, the texture changes, it becomes much more relaxed. You once told me about when you drink a wine early and it kind of makes your shoulders tense.
Absolutely.
And you drink an older wine and it kind of like...
Your shoulders drop half.
Relaxes everything. So, but right now this wine is it's teetering on that brink, and it has both. I don't know what more you could want.
So Erin's saying this is wonderful drinking right now. She says that the 16 is an excitement machine, and having just tasted the 2 again, it's turned her into an excitement machine too. Did you see the energy she's throwing out now? She believes those 2 wines have got it.
They're awesome, and this is the one I'm cellaring.
Yeah.
Yeah, and these are all falling under the bus. I'm drinking all of these because they're beautiful. So look, love them. Cheers. Thanks for listening. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. It really helps us to make these videos, and we obviously love making these videos, maybe now more than ever. If you've got any ideas, any tasting ideas, I have people contacting me all the time saying, can you look at these wines? What about these? Let us know. We've probably already got them on our list. We do like wine. So thank you, and we will see you for our next tasting.
God bless. Ciao.